Indeed, you're quite right. And yes, we're coming to you live from the foyer of the Constitutional Court. Right behind me there are the actual chambers where the 11 justices sit and make those tough decisions that you and I often read about, Leanne. And yes, just walking through the corridors here, taking a look at the architect, it is actually beautiful. The architecture, I should say. The architects are actually from Durban, and they were given the Constitution and asked to actually let it speak to them when they designed this place. And that's why you can see so many glass mirrors and see-through panels, because they wanted transparency. And I thought it was very beautiful, and that's what you and I are looking for when we take a look at the lists and the different members of parliament who will be representing us. We're looking for transparency, and today the IEC, as you rightly said, Leanne, will be handing over those party lists to the Chief Justice Mogoeng. He's fondly known as CJ among his staff, who speak so highly of him. So without further ado, very good morning to you, Chief Justice. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers.
Tell us about the processes and the procedures that are in place. Today, we understand IEC will be handing over those lists to you. What happens next?
You would recall that the electoral process is a constitutional process. It becomes necessary now for those who are known as the guardians of the Constitution and our constitutional democracy to step in and take the process several steps forward. So what is going to be happening after receiving the list of those who are going to represent our people at national parliament and in the provincial legislatures is that on the 21st then, together with officials in parliament, the first sitting of parliament, of the National Assembly rather, will take place. I've already determined that date, and the date of the 22nd is for the National Council of Provinces. The oath of office or the solemn affirmation will then be administered to members of parliament, which will then pave the way for the speaker to be elected by way of a secret ballot. And for that purpose, and I'm confining myself at this stage to the National Assembly, as Chief Justice, I then become the IEC, duly assisted by the Secretary of Parliament and the officials that I would have either administered the oath of office to or the solemn affirmation, so that they do the right thing, there is no cheating, there is no favoritism. We'll then take the responsibility for counting the votes that would have been cast to elect the Speaker. That will then be followed by yet another process over which I preside, and that is the election of the President. All this is supposed to happen during the first sitting of the National Assembly. Thereafter, the very next day, I will preside over the election of the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, but that will also only happen after the members of the National Council of Provinces would have been sworn into office or a solemn affirmation administered to them. On the 21st, the judges presidents who represent the Chief Justice and to whom the powers of the Chief Justice in relation to the election of the Speaker of the provincial legislature and the provincial premiers have been designated or delegated to, they will then assume the responsibility of ensuring that the same process that would be unfolding at national level on the 21st unfolds in relation to the provincial office bearers at a provincial level.
What is the significance of the judiciary in all of this? There are so many processes that are involved. You just highlighted them. One would assume that you vote. After you vote, the president is obvious. You send people to parliament, and that's it. But there is another process that gets underway now. What's the significance of having the judiciary involved in all of this?
As I said earlier on, the judiciary is regarded as the guardians of the Constitution and our constitutional democracy, the conscience of the nation. What then happens is the administration of the oath, as I alluded to earlier on, and the solemn affirmation. And what the nation and those to whom the oath of office and the solemn affirmation would be administered to must remember is that we're not just going through the motions here. This is not an inconsequential ritual. This is not an opportunity just to pose before the cameras in your best attire so that people can get to know about you. the judiciary has to step in and say to those who assume this high responsibility on behalf of the nation that the Constitution requires of you and the laws of this country requires of you, as a parliamentarian, as the member of the provincial legislature, to take your responsibilities very seriously. You're called upon to serve the nation, not yourself. That extends to the president and the premiers, whose inauguration into office will be following later. As you know, the president's is on the 24th of this month. The deputy president, ministers and deputy ministers, whose inauguration will follow a few days after the president's inauguration. So this is a very serious responsibility. We're saying it's 20 years into our democratic order. We all know of the concerns that the citizenry have registered about service delivery, about this or the other thing. So it's a clarion call to these two arms of the branch, made to them through the oath, made to them through the affirmation that duty calls, there is a sense of urgency, and more importantly, as the third branch of government, the judiciary is effectively saying to them, remember, if you don't do what you undertake before us, through the oath, through the solemn affirmation, the nation will then come to us in terms of the Constitution, of which we are guardians, to say they have failed to do something. They will come to the courts over which we preside to say members of parliament have failed, cabinet has failed, the president and the premiers have failed. Intervene and cause them to do what they vowed before you while we were watching to do.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Chief Justice Mogoeng. Yes, the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court, is where we are today. You've just heard this whole process is not just about upholding and respecting our democracy. It's also about safekeeping of our Constitution and living up to those values. And of course, most importantly, accountability for those who serve you and I, the constituency in South Africa. We'll have to leave it there for now, Leanne. Much more coming up a little bit later. Right now, quick ad break. Morning Live continues after that.